this is Danny Korchmar from the Immediate Family.
And I'm Steve Postel from the Immediate Family.
And I'm Leland Sklar from the Immediate Family.
Hi, it's Waddy Wachtel from the Immediate Family.
Hi, it's Russ Kunkel from the Immediate Family. You're listening to Your Morning Coffee, the podcast with Jay Gilbert and Michael Etchart. Weekly music news for the new music business.
From Music Biz Weekly, Spotify and fellow music streamers strike agreement with publishers for 15.35% go-forward royalty rate in the US of A.
From Hypebot, fake musicians inside $1 million Instagram verification scheme.
And from Digital Music News, how to get signed to a record label. Ooh, that'll be fun to talk about, Jay, since we were both musicians and worked at record labels. So we've got a lot to cover today. It's a hot day here in Southern California as Jay and I are recording, but we are glad you are here. So we are going to both push the start button right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand! Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
As I mentioned, Jay, it is toasty warm here on a Sunday as we record this episode.
It is really hot.
Yeah.
You know, I just got off the road. I did 3 shows in 4 days with the tour, which is Rick Springfield, Men at Work, and John Waite. And when we were at one of the venues up north, it was a Thunder Valley Resort in Lincoln, California, outside of Sacramento. During sound check outside, it was 103 degrees.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it's hot. It is hot. I mean, it's always warm in Southern California. And this, you didn't grow up in Southern California, but I did. And this kind of weather always hits right about now. And I remember it going, it would be the first week of school. And I grew up in an era where, yes, we had the heat, but we had no air conditioning in the classrooms. And it's just so, for me, evocative of going back to school, the school year, because it always seemed like the first week of school was just blazing hot.
It's just brutal.
It's brutal. It's Southern California, but it's a dry heat, right, Jay?
Well, that's what they say. But this little, I caught the tail end of this tour because I've worked with Rick Springfield for many, many years, and same with John Waite. And what a wonderful
it's a great package. It's a great package. And
have you been to that new YouTube theater? It's attached to or part of SoFi Stadium, the new stadium.
I've walked by it because I went to a football game there, but I have not been to a venue. I've heard good things about it.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely stunning. It holds about 6,000. And that was the first night that we went to. And it was just so great to reconnect with, the band and management. And it was just such a wonderful show. And what I noticed from all of these shows is all of the smiles on the faces of these people in the audience. They're, some of them, they're just now going back to seeing live shows. And to have this familiar music that they grew up on, it was just a joy.
There are so many tours out and so many shows that I've been to a ton of concerts in the last 6 months, and there's so many that I've missed. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So it's kind of neat that this is a really great package tour. You can kind of get 3 bands for the one event, and
and they're all so good, and they have so many songs that we love. The second night was the City Winery outside of San Jose in a town called Saratoga, and I think the building's like 100 years old. It's on the top of this hill, and it's surrounded by vineyards. Again, outdoors, just stunning. And while I was there, I got to visit the new Apple headquarters. That spaceship-looking building. I
saw the picture, and we should also mention that we are both complete Apple and Mac fanboys and have been for a long, long, long time. So you got to go to Mecca. Nice.
Now, I had been up there, I've been going to their offices for business for many years. And one of my favorite things to do there at One Infinite Loop is they have a store. And you can go in there, and it's like an Apple store that you would see anywhere, except that they have a few things that, for us fanboys, like they have some coffee mugs and T-shirts and pens and pads and things like that. And in the old days, they had a whole lot more of that stuff. Mm-hmm. Now they have, maybe a dozen items or whatever. So they have that, but then they have this visitor center, which I hadn't been to before. And this new visitor center has a wonderful coffee shop, and it looks like an art museum. I mean, the architecture is just beautiful, but you can go on the roof, and it's all, fine wooden chairs and everything, and it kind of overlooks the new spaceship offices.
Wow.
And for an Apple fanboy like me to, go up there and visit the Mecca and have a cup of coffee there and to just see those new offices, it was pretty cool.
Wow, good for you. I'm color me jealous for sure. But as we're talking about being Apple fanboys, when I started at Universal, so this is in 1999 in the the division that we work at, which is kind of the advanced tech group. That was one of the questions they asked me. What computer system do you use? And there were all of us in that group were all Apple fanboys at a time when that was not very common. You forget that Apple for a good
corporate.
No, Apple for a long time was not doing very well, and it's funny to think back to those days now because they are such a dominant force. But that was kind of our little group of people. We were all Apple fanboys.
Yeah.
And
yes, sir.
That was pre-iPod, or no, the iPod maybe had just come out, but way pre-iPhone. Yeah, what a fun trip that must have been, though. I'm totally jealous.
It was just, I'm such a fanboy. It was so much fun. Let's thank those gentlemen in Immediate Family for that cool intro. And for those of you that don't know Immediate Family, you may not know that name, but you certainly know the players. Or you've heard them on all of your favorite albums for decades. It's Danny Korchmar on guitar, it's Leland Sklar on bass, Russ Kunkel on drums, Waddy Wachtel on guitar, and Steve Postel on guitar. And these guys have been on just all these great tours, all these great albums, and there's a documentary coming, and I'm super excited for this. They've got a new album coming too, but this documentary that's coming is directed by Danny Tedesco, who you might remember from The Wrecking Crew back in 2008. So this Immediate Family documentary, you can learn more about it at immediatefamilyfilm.com, and I highly encourage you to go check this out because you'll see that the people that they've played with that are in this film, I'll just name off a few: David Crosby, Keith Richards, Stevie Nicks, Phil Collins, Jackson Brown, Don Henley, James Taylor, Carole King, Linda Ronstadt. I mean, the list goes on. And I was telling you before we hit record that I think it was New Year's Eve, there was a concert on TV. It might have been CNN, I think. And it was James Taylor and Carole King. And it was wonderful. But the band is these guys that I just mentioned, Immediate Family. And for musicians, they're like musicians, right?
Yep.
So again, you may not know those names. Some of you will. But they are part of rock history.
Absolutely. And I know you photographed them. I had a chance to interview them for some NPR stuff. And they are just also such charming guys. They're all really nice, and they have such funny and wonderful stories, and they've all five have lived the dream, boy, and continue to live the dream that we've, as growing up as musicians, when you're kids, they've all done what we wanted to do, and they just are lovely, lovely people, charming, just very kind, and I wish them all the best. It was, they're just so nice and fun. They have just funny stories. They're just great people.
Yeah,
so fun
just
stuff.
the amazing things that they've done, recorded, toured, all of that. I think the first viewing of this documentary is September 30th at the Woodstock Film Festival. I think that's the first one, but I've only seen part of it. I can't wait to see the whole thing.
Yeah,
it's going to be absolutely amazing.
Well, and if you if you haven't seen the documentary, The Wrecking Crew, which was done by Danny Tedesco, and he is the son of Tommy Tedesco, who was a famous session musician in Los Angeles, passed away many years ago. But The Wrecking Crew was really a loving homage to his father. And I was wondering if he's going to do another documentary film. So what a neat group of people too, because all these guys were kind of the next generation after his father of session cats that were doing all of the stuff in the 70s and into the 80s, and they were on so many records, and so I'm sure that documentary is going to be great. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Well, Jay, when we do our show, we stand on the shoulders of giants, as we like to say, and we have to thank our sponsors because we are so lucky to have the folks we have, including our good friends at Bandzoogle, built by musicians for musicians. Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform that makes it easy to build a beautiful website and EPK for your music. All the features you need for a professional website are already built in, including hosting and a custom domain name, dozens of fully customizable design templates, tools to sell your music and merch commission-free crowdfunding, and a fan subscription features, mailing list tools to grow your fan list and send newsletters. I got to fix this page, Jay. Social media integrations and live support from their musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Your Morning Coffee podcast listeners can go over to bandzoogle.com to try it free for 30 days and use the promo code MORNINGCOFFEE, all one word, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code MORNINGCOFFEE.
Yeah, and Your Morning Coffee, the podcast, is also brought to you by our friends at Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. Edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton, thank you, Bruce, with help from Alana Bonilla. Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town. And speaking of Bands in Town, over 65 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist services platform connecting over 550,000 artists with their superfans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms.
Big thanks, Bandzoogle, Hypebot, and Bands in Town. And by the way, my Bands in Town app has been blowing up with all of the dates that are coming, which we're talking about all the different shows that are out on the road. And I get to do this show every week with the impossibly handsome Jay Gilbert. He is the co-founder of music marketing and strategy company Label Logic. He's the curator of the Your Morning Coffee newsletter and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music, and also Fox Home Entertainment. And I see through my little screen here that he has his Minnesota Vikings shirt on because hope springs eternal when it comes to football, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and this guy sitting across from me virtually is longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Groups. I forgot to mention your name. It's Mike Etchart.
There you go. And I clearly had trouble keeping jobs for crying out loud. It was a wild and woolly time, Jay. It was a wild and woolly
judgment.
time. There you go. Well, what do you say we jump into, this is actually good news. This first story from Music Biz Weekly. Spotify and fellow music streamers strike an agreement with publishers for 15.35% go-forward royalty rate in the United States. And
yeah. And we've been talking about this quite a bit over the last few months, the Copyright Royalty Board and kind of the nastiness of this fight going back and forth. And I love the fact that they kind of put down their swords. And, the rumor was that, the publishers, the NMPA, they were really pushing for 20% was a rumor, and the DSPs were pushing for something closer to 10%. And so there's this fight going back and forth. And, setting this rate going forward for Phono Records 4 or CRB 4, it's going to be this new rate, and it's going to be for the next 5 years. So it's a beautiful thing for songwriters and for publishers.
Yeah, this is for the years 2023 through 2027, so it's going to set to get underway later this year. It's really good news because, like you said, the first go around of this was really ugly. I mean,
it got a little nasty.
It really did, but this is and what of course happens is that the major streamers are always kind of lowballing numbers because this goes directly to their bottom line, and we've talked many times about this and how sort of appalling and galling it is that building their business on songwriting. And we talked when we did our special episode with Mercuriatis. This is this ongoing discussion, which is without the songs there is nothing. Without songwriters that create these wonderful songs that make the business, and you just sit there and grind them and you try to it's just so awful, but yet we kind of
and I don't necessarily point the finger just at the digital service providers, because most of them are really paying out nearly 70% of the revenue they take in, which is very similar to iTunes when downloads were the main configuration. It's difficult to slice up that pie and have everybody feel good about it. I think that everyone should participate, even the record labels, in making sure that the songwriters are taken care of. So what this article, and I think this is from Tim Ingham from Music Business Worldwide, he points out that all three parties are submitting a joint proposal to the CRB. So this isn't locked in yet, but probably will be. And that new proposal suggests that the new on-demand streaming mechanical rate in the U.S. For 2023, as you mentioned, through 2027, should be set at 15.35%. Now, right now, it was just negotiated to 15.1%. So we're not talking about a huge increase. So I think that was one of the reasons that made it so everybody could agree. So in a joint announcement that was announced last week, the music publishers and the digital services said, and I quote, that the 15.35% agreement will provide higher royalty rates for songwriters and music publishers. It'll promote sustainability, innovation, and continued investment for the entire industry and usher in a new era of collaboration between all parties. And I think that is a good thing and is key here.
And let us all sing Kumbaya just for once, please. As it said, noting that the suggested 15.35% rate would be phased in over the 5-year term as part of the proposal, an NMPA, DEMA, and NSAI press release issued today further explains the deal also includes a number of changes to other components of the rate, including increases to the per-subscriber minimums and the total content costs, which are the acronym TCC, calculations which reflect the rates that services pay to record labels. As streaming services continue to innovate to deliver songwriters' works to growing numbers of paying fans, the agreement also modernizes the treatment of bundles of products or services that include music streaming and updates how services can offer incentives to attract new subscribers into the music ecosystem. So what's interesting, I think, is that we all focus kind of on the number. In this case, 15.35%. But it sounds like there's
a little more to it.
There's a little bit more going on underneath that might really kind of hopefully benefit songwriters even further, besides just the rate. So
I think that's an important point. And I told you when I was at the Music Business Association conference in Nashville, I had a chance to sit down and have coffee with DEMA president and CEO Garrett Levin. What a great guy. And he's a music fan first. We just talked music, he's such a great guy. Anyway, he was quoted in this article as saying that this agreement represents the commitment of the streaming services to bring, the best music experiences to fans, and growing the streaming ecosystem. And I think that's key to benefit all stakeholders, including the creative foundation of songwriting.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. And then the NMPA president and CEO David Israelite said this historic settlement is the result of songwriters making their voices heard. Instead of going to trial and continuing years of conflict, we instead moved forward in collaboration with the highest rates ever guaranteed. We thank the digital services for coming to the table and treating creators as business partners. Critically, since this is a percentage rate, we know that as streaming continues to grow exponentially, we will see unprecedented value of songs. That's an understatement.
Yeah,
Without a doubt.
I think that is amazing. And just to put a fine point on this piece, you'll remember that this is CRB4, CRB3, or Phono Records 3 we've been talking about, that negotiation. And that was the one that really increased what the songwriters and publishers get. So all in all, on these last two proceedings, it's a historic, almost 44% pay increase, and that is phenomenal. The progress that we've made in just a short period of time.
Yeah. That's really great news. But again, this is money for the people that make the magic and continue to make the magic. So if they're getting more money, then I am happy. But whenever I read these things, I still come back to, and we've talked about this so much on the podcast, which is, why are streaming monthly rates so cheap relative to all the other digital platforms and services we all subscribe to? And it's part of this kind of back and forth frustration between each side is that they're working under this umbrella where they have not raised subscription rates for so long. 10, 15, 12 years. It's been forever that there's been a raise. So I wonder if that's going to be coming in the near future, if we'll finally get a bump up in subscription service.
Well, I think this is an evolution of all of these things that we've been talking about, whether it's the DSPs and what they charge and the different tiers and different bundles. And it's not as simple as just saying we need to pay songwriters more. It's a zero-sum game in some aspects. So it's going to take some creativity and some smart people to look at this whole ecosystem, which, basically is set on, piano rolls almost 100 years ago. And so we're making progress. It's slow.
Oh, no. I am throwing up the victory flag right now, and I'm happily seeing this. And again, the fact that without the knockdown, drag out drama that the last round was, it's nice to see this one kind of come together. So very exciting. Good stuff. Exactly. All right, let's move on to the next one. This one's also very interesting. And this I had to read this one twice. This is from Hypebot. Fake musicians inside $1 million Instagram verification scheme. And oh my God.
Well, this just illustrates, some of the ways that people are trying to game the system.
Yes.
We talk about people buying likes, buying followers, buying streams, and that's a big problem. And this is something I hadn't really looked into, and it's really based on an article from ProPublica with the same headline. Our friends over at Hypebot, Bruce Houghton, mainly, kind of put together this recap of what the heck is going on over there, and it's really kind of creepy.
It is. The article starts with saying hundreds of people, including a doctor, a jeweler, a crypto entrepreneur, and 2 reality show TV stars, were involved in a multi-million scheme, I think he meant dollar scheme, to falsely get verified as musicians on Instagram. This is according to a ProPublica investigation. The hope of those who paid around $25,000 each for false Instagram verification was that the little blue badge would lead to lucrative endorsements and social status. I mean, which mean they had to spend a lot of money to try to make a lot of money in this scam. Two of those accounts were for Mike Vasquez and Lexi Salema, both stars of the MTV reality show Siesta Key, who instead of getting verified for their TV work were falsely branded online as musicians just so that they could receive verification. Amongst these other folks, a plastic surgeon, Dr. Martin Hugenberg, whose previous attempt to become an influencer led to a 6-month suspension of his Ontario medical license after he admitted to filming patients and sharing it online without their consent. Oh my God. On Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, and more than a dozen sponsored posts scattered across the net, however, his past was eclipsed by his persona as DJ Dr. 666. That's what it is. It was the number
DJ
6.
Dr. 6.
Yes, it was the number 6 with IX. After a supposed house music producer who celebrated for his inherent instinctual ability for music composition.
Oh my God. Read that again. That's amazing.
This was his
inherent instinctual ability
for music composition.
However, but it goes on to say, his music is not worth listening to, right? And almost no one did. But it was enough to get a verification badge, for his Instagram account. And this is the part that's important, is that the scheme likely generated millions in revenue for its operators.
Yeah.
That is crazy. We've seen some of these scams and we've reported on some of these scams. And we should point out that Instagram has deleted or removed those verification badges from at least 300 false accounts since this ProPublica investigation.
And I'll be honest, I didn't really understand the whole thing about badges. But you talk about, again, everybody wants to be famous and rich, and they will stop at nothing. It says, and by the way, the writers for ProPublica, Craig Silverman and Bianca Fortis, are the ones that kind of got the ball rolling on this. It says the people running the scheme also purchased articles promoting fake artists and their music on websites, including hip-hop publications like The Source and ThisIs50.com, a music and culture site affiliated with 50 Cent. They often bought fake comments and likes for clients' Instagram posts to make the accounts look popular and purchased fake streams for songs on Spotify, according to two sources with direct knowledge of the operation. One source said some clients were told to rent a recording studio and post photos on Instagram that made it look like they were working on music. Oh God! I mean, it wasn't so appalling. It's oh God. It says you can make a Spotify account or Apple Music account and boost the streams and get fake music press very cheap. It's quick and easy. A source.
So let's look at what they were doing. They were trying to get this falsely earned verification badge by buying likes, follows, streams, gaming the search, with fake articles. And I mean, they were pulling out all the stops. And so ProPublica kind of lays out, like, how does false verification work? And I'll take the first step, which is a client creates content showing them in designer clothing or luxury locations or in a recording studio to make them look like a musician.
Right. Spotify and Apple Music profiles are created for the client. Basic songs are uploaded with album art, and fake streams are purchased to make their songs appear popular.
So those paid articles about the client's songs are published to add further, quote unquote, legitimacy.
The client posts their lifestyle and music content, spacing it out over time. Engagement in the form of likes, comments, and followers are purchased for the posts, providing evidence of popularity.
Wow. Google search engine indexes the client's music and those articles, then automatically generates that knowledge panel, off to the right side. Mm-hmm. And that knowledge panel is what brands the person as a musical artist when someone searches for their name.
God. In final preparation for verification, the client edits their Instagram bio feed and highlights to emphasize their musical career.
Fake career. And then the last step is the client's Instagram account is submitted to Meta, which is the parent company of Instagram and Facebook. It's submitted to Meta for verification. If everything goes as planned, they get that blue check, verification check.
And Bob's your uncle,
crazy,
right? Oh my God! And at the beginning, it's just so these are people that I mean, this is a doctor that's trying to scam this. These are people who are already sort of reality show people. It's like, my God, have you no shame? I mean, it's
just so sleazy and so. But here's the thing, Mike. It's not hard to see when people are trying to game these systems. Anybody worth their weight, whether it's at a label, distributor, management company, they know to look at platforms. Whether it's something as simple as Spotify for artists, or you're going in to use, let's say, Viberate, the data panel or platform, they have a chart that shows your audience growth, and then right underneath it is engagement. And if you have a spike in audience growth over a week or two, and you don't have any engagement, that's a red flag. Because typically when you're getting those new followers, they're going to be engaged somehow. And so some of these things are pretty easy to figure out. And I love the fact that Instagram went back and eliminated 300 of these things.
Yeah. And there's a picture of DJ Dr. Six. I didn't notice it there. It's like, oh my God.
Man.
It's
wow.
It's sort of, it's just like, oh my God, it's so embarrassing, I guess what it is. It's like, really, you want that
DJ
hard?
Dr. Six.
I know. It's like, dude,
Look at him. He's sitting there he looks like a 40-year-old white dude wearing a baseball cap and glasses eating a pizza or something. It's not like it's got the most street cred that I've ever seen.
No, it's anti-street cred without a doubt. Well, as we've talked about so many times, if there's an ecosystem, somebody will try to game it no matter what. And this is a particularly egregious telling of people that were trying to do it. But I'm sure there's more things, and we will continue to chat about this.
Yes,
but it's
yes, we will. And if you want to read the deep dive, and it is a deep dive that you talked about by Craig Silverman and Bianca Fortis over at ProPublica, there's a link to it in that story. And it goes into the details if you're interested in this stuff. But, you give someone a system today, and there's always going to be someone who's going to try to scam it.
Yes, exactly. All right. Our next story, Jay, from Digital Music News: how to get signed to a record label.
Oh my gosh.
In 2022. And it's really, it's a good article, and I would say it's actually a really good primer for anybody that wants to be successful in the music industry. Forget trying to get a record label deal, but it's stuff that to obviously consider if you're an artist or you're working with artists on how to do it right. And I think we've talked a lot about what's it like being signed to a major label today. It's way different than it was in our era.
Right.
You have to really make that decision. Is it worth your time to even pursue that? But all the steps along the way are super important to
Well, let's
consider.
talk about the guy who wrote this. He goes by Gaetano, and he's an artist. He has music out, but he's also a writer. If you read his bio, he says, "I'm a singer-songwriter, producer, and guitarist from the Bronx, New York. As a part-time contributor to Digital Music News, I share some of my hard-learned lessons about the fast-evolving music industry." And I'm just going to read you a few headlines of some pieces that he's written, and a lot of these were in your morning coffee. In addition to the one we're talking about today, how to get signed to a record label, he wrote, "How I Learned to Hate the Phrase Blue-Eyed Soul," "What to Do When SoundCloud Removes Your Music," "Dating a Musician Isn't Easy, Just Ask a Musician," and then 5 music industry schemes that still exploit artists. So I really enjoy this guy's writing, Gaetano, really great stuff. And this covers something that you and I talk about frequently, about getting signed by a record label. It used to be when we were growing up playing in bands and playing in live shows and things, that was kind of the dream, was to get signed by a record label, and then all your problems would be solved. It's a whole new ecosystem today, but I love this piece because it goes into, do you really deserve to be signed, or should you be signed? Are you at the level to be signed? And what labels look for when signing artists?
Yeah, he starts by saying, the reality of getting signed today. Record labels are like venture capitalists, and indie musicians are a startup company. The investor will provide financial resources and exclusive connections to artists with high growth potential, and that was bolded, in exchange for an equity stake. Depending on the type of record deal you sign, that equity stake can total 50 to 90% of a signed artist's earnings, but perhaps it still beats the $25,000 median annual salary of an indie musician. Right? And by the way, that seems a little high, to be honest.
It might be. He goes on to say that the bottom line is that record companies will only sign you if they believe they can profit from you. It's the music business, right? Even if you're worthy of a record deal, there's a lot more competition today with 4,000 monthly Google searches for terms like how to get a record deal and how to get signed by a record label. You kind of have to ask yourself, how would I stack up against those other 4,000 artists?
Yeah, good point. And he goes on to say, if you're desperate to get signed, it won't happen. He says, as the saying goes, don't try to get signed, try to get popular first. But it's true. And it's I will make an obvious statement, which is getting a record deal is the easy part. It's then making it happen once you've been signed, of course. And again, things happen. And if you even if you put out a great album, guess what? Another great album a greater album might happen roughly the same time that album hits for the same label. And suddenly you're competing with other artists on that label for the internal attention, for the internal marketing dollars. So, boy,
There's only so many priorities.
That's
right?
exactly right. Every release is not a priority. I can guarantee you that.
I think the misconception sometimes is that a label is just a bank, and it's much more than that. We're not going to bash labels because we've worked for labels. If you get a good label, they've got a global reach of people, evangelists, and the marketing that goes behind it and the relationships. They can move mountains. But what he points out here, in addition to what you just said, is he says the funny thing about getting a record deal is that you already need to be doing the things a major label would help you accomplish.
Yes.
Artists who get record deals usually don't need a label. That's the irony of getting signed. And I hear this every week from my friends at labels. They're not just looking for that TikTok star that just broke out. They're looking, like it's that Warner Music book we talked about. It's that mentality in the early days where they're looking for a lineup around the block. They're looking for someone who's already got a social following, that already has streaming numbers, that's already got a little bit of a tour history, that's playing live regularly. So you build your own fire, and a good label will throw gasoline on it, but they're not going to start your fire typically.
Right. And don't forget, they want you to be, it's in the label's best interest to make you a catalog artist. We've talked about how important catalog is, and that doesn't mean you get to release one album and go bye-bye. They want to create catalog artists because it's all about the catalog. So
it's a business.
It's a business, exactly. So, he's actually got 10 steps to get signed to a record label in 2022. But again, this is really just sort of nuts and bolts about what you should really be doing to build your artist stature and to do the right things, which is what in the old days labels did, but those things have kind of changed a little bit. They're really looking to, as we've talked about a number of times, they're really great at taking a campfire and making it a forest fire.
Absolutely. And we talk about artist managers, and it really started with people like Irving Azoff and Howard Kaufman and some of those folks, and now kind of the next generation, Jonathan Daniel, people who look at the business as managers and then started taking over the roles and responsibilities that were traditionally from a label. And they partner with really great labels, but they know their strengths and their weaknesses. But you had mentioned that this article is really has 10 steps to get signed by a record label in 2022. And I'd like to kind of walk through those because, again, it's evolving and changing. We like to say it's changed while we've been having this conversation, right? So the first one is don't quit your day job until you can afford to go all in. And I think that's really, really smart because you shouldn't go broke to pursue your dream as a rapper, for example. But let's face it, you need stability. If you don't have the money, you won't be able to invest in advancing your music career. How will you pay for things like recording costs, music production fees, mixing and mastering, equipment, music videos, just overall marketing, promotion, merch, et cetera, et cetera? There's a lot of expense that goes into that. And that's why some of these artists that already have a base, that are already touring and already building their audience, they have that revenue to sort of draw from. So I think that first one, don't quit your day job. I think that is really good advice.
Well, and the article starts about talking just some very pragmatic things in terms of what labels are and what they're looking for in artists. And this is much the same advice as if you're starting your own business, which is, do you have it, do you, whatever, if you're working for a company and do you quit that to start? Well, maybe you do, but maybe you need the money for that startup business and you need to keep working. So the more you think about your career being a business, the better off you're going to be, for sure. He also talks about, be realistic. Are you signable? Is it, be honest with yourself and ask certain questions. Do I have mass market appeal? Do I have my own unique style of music? Do I have the star qualities that a label looks for? Is this really is this a career opportunity or an expensive hobby? And we know from experience, Jay, that it's an expensive hobby. For sure. Do you know how to effectively market yourself online? Do you know what to do when you get momentum going? Can you write hit songs? Are you a content creation machine? Because boy, that's so important now. It's not just to be,
Absolutely.
You're not just a songwriter. You're not just a performer. You are a content creator, and that means a lot more now than it did in our era. Are you brandable? Do you have a memorable artist name, for crying out loud? Are your social media accounts engaging? Are your live shows on point? Boy, and that's another huge one. And how does your music compare to artists that are already signed? So these are hard questions and to be, at least in my experience, it's rare the artist that has that ability to honestly look at themselves and their skill set to answer a lot of these questions.
Right. And are there exceptions, that lightning in a bottle, 1 in a million artist? Yeah. But that's rare. And I think this article is just so well written about the things that you have to consider. The third one is learn how to write hit records. It's a meritocracy. It's this, we talk about that Jonathan Daniel quote very often, and I'll repeat it again. If you give me a great song, my job is easy. You give me a good song, my job is impossible.
Yeah.
And so, number 3, learn how to write hit records. This is the music business, and it's all about hit songs, right? So consider your approach to music releases. Are you going to do singles, EPs, albums? What are you going to do? How will you find music producers? Home studio versus a pro studio. What about mixing and mastering? Which digital distributor are you going to work with? Keep in mind that you don't necessarily have to be signed to a label in order to become a successful songwriter. I think number 3 should have probably been number 1 if you're prioritizing, but it's crucial. You have to write hit songs.
Well, and I would do an asterisk to that. And I would say that you also need to aggressively find collaborators, because as we have seen now, the process of successful songwriters, for the most part, is now not a single endeavor, one person sitting. And certainly, lots of people do that. But when you look at the songs on any chart, these are collaborative efforts. Oftentimes with 7, 8 songwriters songwriting a track. So that is now such a. There's always been elements of that, but it is so crucial now. And, it's the specialization that has come into. So you have people that's expertise are in hooks and choruses and all this other stuff. And that actually leads to another thing, which is learn music production. I'm a huge Todd Rundgren fan. And, there were a handful of artists in our era when we were kids that you would look, and it was such a rare thing. It's like, ooh, they had their own studio in their house, and they would make records by themselves. Well, guess what? That is really now the way it is done. And so learning music production, the more you learn about the music creation process, the more signable you become. Why? Because the more skills you can bring to the table, the more appealing you'll become to a record label. You might get not signed as an artist, but you could earn a production deal if you have serious skills. And it's so much easier now. So as they say, learn how to make beats on your own. This also saves you money on producers' fees. Learn about DAWs, that's digital audio workstations, and the basics of how they work. And not only that, learn how to track vocals and learn these, I would say the big three, which is Pro Tools, Logic, and Ableton Live. Learn the basics of mixing, mastering, plugins, and the new music production technologies. And as a bonus, learn how to play a musical instrument like piano or guitar at a basic level, which is kind of funny to me because in our day, you started with that, It's like,
right.
You gotta learn
Not
to play
so much today.
Not so much today.
No. We covered a story a while back. There was an artist that blew up on TikTok, and they brought her into the studio. She'd never seen a real instrument or studio before, because you can produce things, on a computer with loops and beats and samples and all sorts of things. So I think that's really great advice, learning to do that stuff, because history is full of people like Tom Scholz from Boston, this mastermind, and even today, Tobias from Ghost, these people, the Brian Wilsons of the world, that it's super important to learn all of that stuff that you just mentioned. Number 5 is learn the business side of music. And this is so important. You'd be surprised, and you brought this up when we were meeting with Apple in the studio recently, where there are executives and staffers at major music companies that don't know how a record is made.
I know it.
And it's crucial to learn the business side of how you make a record and how you, what everybody's roles and responsibilities are with that. And I always recommend a few books. And I'll do it again. The Brabeck brothers have this great book on the business side and how to monetize your music career. Donald Passman, of course, his books are amazing, and everybody in the music industry practically owns, his books. But this new 10th edition is by far the best one because it covers more of the digital world. And you and I rave about, our friend Will Page with Tarzan Economics. And then the last one that I think is just a must have is Mike Warner's book, Work Hard, Playlist Hard. So covering the business side of music, he states that you really have to learn the role of all the people and things that will be involved in your music career. Things like, learn the role of a music manager, a music agent, music attorney, a publicist. You need to learn about the roles of streaming platforms like, Apple Music, Pandora, Deezer, Spotify, etc. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago. We did this deep dive that Billboard did on digital distribution. And it says, learn the role of digital distribution, things like TuneCore, DistroKid, CD Baby, etc. And then talk about, or learn about, I should say, the PROs like BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, GMR. Learn the role of music publishing companies. What do they do? What are their roles and responsibilities? What about Sound Exchange? Learn about artist royalties and songwriter royalties. And learn the role of sync licensing. We talk about that quite a bit. And then the last thing he says you should learn about are copyrights and trademarks. But all of these things that we just mentioned are crucial to your business. And those managers and artists that I see today that are succeeding, they have a better understanding of all of these things that we're pointing out and that Gaetano wrote in this wonderful piece for Digital Music News.
Yeah. And of course, if you are considering trying to get a label deal, you got to learn the different types of record deals that are out there. And by the way, that is something that has changed dramatically over the last, call it 2 decades. There's all kinds of different flavors of what a record deal is. There's a 360 record deal, the what we would call the traditional or conventional record deal. There's a distribution deal, a singles deal, an EP deal, a licensing deal, publishing deals, production deals. There's all kinds of different flavors now that a potential record deal could come in. He also sends a link to a video from Financial Times to talk about the inner workings of how record deals work. So it's a really great resource there as well.
This is one of those articles that you and I talk about that you need to print out.
Yes.
You need to have this, on your desk and refer to it and make notes. I don't know if there's anybody in the music industry that knows every detail of all of these points, so don't feel stupid if you don't. My grandfather had this great saying that, an idiot is someone who doesn't know what you just found out. Right? So just educate yourself. Don't feel stupid if you don't know some of these things. Nobody does. All of these. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, but not many. Everybody has holes in their education. Number 7, learn how to monetize your music career. This is crucial. It's the music business. So how do you make money from music? Well, he lists, 10 things that you should learn about. Song placements, meaning sync licensing, performance royalties, mechanical royalties, digital album and song sales, live shows. He says sales, but we also include streaming in that. Selling merch, songwriting and producing for other artists, brand partnerships, influencer and affiliate marketing, and then offering exclusive fan club memberships, like Patreon, OnlyFans, things like that. There are so many different ways. And listen, these are 10, but that Brabeck, the Brabeck brothers book about monetizing your music career is the best, because they go into every single aspect of things like ridiculous things like licensing your music for these musical toothbrushes they have. It's all the obvious things, and then maybe some things that you haven't thought of.
Right, exactly. They also mentioned master the art of online marketing and music promotion. Yes, indeed. It's perhaps the most important skill you can learn as an upcoming artist or musician, because it's a transferable skill that can apply to any business. Absolutely. So, as he says, how do you do that? You got to know your audience. Gimmicks, do you have one? Content creation. Again, this is kind of what we've talked about too over the span of doing this podcast, which is, there's so many things besides songwriting now that is important for an artist, and that is, the video content, all the things you can do that under the big umbrella of content creation, social media, playlists, websites. Do you need one? Press coverage, radio, search engine optimization, organic versus paid. Will you pay to play or grow organically or leverage a mix of both? So many things you have to consider. I mean, it's overwhelming. It really is. And it's, as we've talked about so many times, the good news is you don't need a label. All of these things you can do or have somebody do on your behalf.
There it is.
But it's so much to know and learn.
That's what I was going to say, Mike, is that you don't have to know publicity. You can hire a publicist at some point, hopefully. You don't need to know all the details, but you should be knowledgeable at least at what it is and what people's roles and responsibilities are. So don't feel overwhelmed, because there are smart people out there that you can bring onto your team that can help you with these areas. And number 9 is master the art of networking. And I can't tell you how important this is. A couple of my artists do this thing that I absolutely love. They keep a Google Doc when they're on tour of everybody they meet, at the radio station, at the venue, wherever it is, and what their name is, their email address, what their wife's name is, or their dog, or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And they keep in contact with them. My business partner, Jeff Moscow, has this thing where he reaches out to people when he doesn't need anything.
Yeah.
And I think it's brilliant. He'll just reach out. Hey, Mike, what's going on? How the kids, are things going on? Just checking in, seeing how things are going. And it's sincere, and it keeps that relationship alive. And then, maybe sometime he does need a little bit of help. Hey, can you help me with this thing? Yeah. Someone's more apt to help if that person isn't always, asking for something. So master the art of networking. And he has some quick tips, and I won't go through all the detail, but basically the high level thing is, make a good first impression. And he says the sauce is in the follow-up. Absolutely. Yeah. Be consistent, be specific. He talks a little bit about timing. When do you shoot that shot? Going around roadblocks. And then finally, being aware of the scams. But the more I read through this article, the more I think this is just one of the best pieces I've ever read or posted in your morning coffee, because he's taking the emotion out of it, and he's just saying, look, these are the things that you're going to encounter in your music career.
He's got this great line under Master the Art of Networking, which is, you need to imagine that when you approach someone, they are a bank account. I mean, it's kind of crass, but it's kind of true. And I would say number 10 could have been number 1. and that's develop a killer live show. Because it for many things, it starts with that. The primary purpose of performing live is not to get signed. However, it can increase the odds of being noticed by label A&Rs. But the primary purpose really is to connect with your audience and fans in a way that's more meaningful than doing it online. I just think that's
and to
really
build
good.
it, right?
And to
Not just
build it.
connect with your audience, but how many times have we gone to shows and seen a great opening band and we're hooked?
Yes.
It's happened many times.
And when you're playing live, it's one of the tips he mentions is don't always expect to make money. And I think that's a really important part. There are certainly opportunities to play live when you just never know what connections you're going to make. And that's been true for the years that I've been playing live. It's amazing, when you do a solid like that sometimes good things come your way. So really interesting article. And again, it's under the headline of how to get signed to a record label in 2022 or a 2022 update. But this is just so many common sense things if you're an artist out there to be aware of, not necessarily be an expert at, but at least to consider all of these things because it's so complex, far more complex than it was, in the days when getting signed to a label oftentimes was really the end goal. And it can be now, but it may not necessarily be. So
print this thing out,
print
keep
it
it, and send a nice little thank you note to Gaetano, who wrote this for Digital Music News. Absolutely fantastic piece, Gaetano. Cheers. We appreciate you.
Exactly. Well, and as we wrap up this show, I do want to thank our wonderful sponsors, Bandzoogle, Hypebot, and Bands in Town. Boy, we certainly appreciate it. And Jay, once we stop hitting record, I'm going to go and turn my air conditioner up because I'm already getting hot in the room here. It's time to close up the house.
Yeah, stay cool, brother.
Yes, I will do that. So
enjoy the holiday weekend too.
Oh yes, it is. It's a 3-day weekend, so I'm going to enjoy that. And I want to thank everyone for listening into the podcast. Jay and I certainly appreciate it. So on behalf of the famously handsome Jay Gilbert and myself, I want to say thank you, and we will see you next week on the Your Morning Coffee podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.